After my third time, it worked. I don't know, but I'm sitting here. Fuck's sake. Holy cow. That was fucking stupid. I tried it 3 or 4 different times and it was just black screen bullshit. Sorry about that, everybody. I don't get it. Everybody else just clicks on shit with OBS Studio, and I've got it's just some days. So why don't we just give everybody a couple of minutes to find where I ran to? I hope everybody's staying healthy and safe. I think I'm getting the sniffles. But I think it's just the sniffles. I haven't seen anybody or gone anywhere, so. All right, I think everybody found where we were. I can run, but I can't hide. Yeah. Allergies. It's right about that time of year where you got to do big spring clean after a big dusty winter. And yeah, so. I've heard a lot of that as well, that people don't seem to get notifications for things. And the other thing I'll talk about right quick. Well, you know what? I'll talk about that later because it's the most fun thing I have to talk about. Just remind me that I have something fun to talk about before I fuck off. All right, gang. Are we ready? You did. I seem to be okay. Everything's synced up. Everybody can hear me okay. I'm not all fucking quiet or super loud or something. You ready? All right. Good evening and welcome to Doctorpiece Theater. My name is Dr. Dennis Business, and tonight we are going to continue our dive into This Is Why I Hate You. When we last left our hero, he was in the army having some sort of a relationship with some girl named Corey. And Arthur says that this is where he belongs. So I have a fucked up feeling that we're not leaving the military base anytime soon. Chapter 12. Designed to Fail. I've had a lot of problems with training since my last entry. A staff sergeant I absolutely despise humiliated me in front of the entire flight through a sequence of events. I was so sick of this trainer, Sergeant Cassava, prancing around like she owned the place when she was obviously barely 23 and got ahead in the Air Force on book smarts alone. On an uncomfortably hot day, during one of her many emasculating rants, she said, "You're a bunch of pansies! You should be ashamed of yourselves! The way you've been performing is pathetic! You think people deserve respect? You're so strong! You're nothing!" This was after we had all busted our butts the entire morning to perform their expectations on yet another ridiculous training course. The amount of anger I felt for a baby-face daddy's girl like Sergeant Cassava insulting everyone in the flight is such a disrespectful way overrode every social precaution I had. I stood in the middle of our formation. Every word she spoke added to my rage, till I finally screamed, "Sergeant Cavassa, you just violated the UCMJ." The silence that loomed after my objection was deafening. After seconds of no one knowing how to react, like the woman child she was when she screeched back, "Who is that? Who said that? Who the hell said that?" I screamed again. "Airman Linfeld said that." She screeched once more. "Step out of formation now!" I promptly complied. She approached me and said, "What did you just say to me?" Standing at position of parade rest, I replied, "The UCMJ specifically states you are not authorized to use any language that emasculates airmen. You have called us pansies and have used other emasculating terms repeatedly throughout training." Sergeant Cassava had a fresh look of confusion and fear. We all lived by the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It served as a system of rules we all had to abide by, in addition to the civilian laws we were already subject to. Sergeant Cassava remained silent in front of me. She was obviously not well versed on the section of UCMJ I was referencing. This fact was hilarious, because it was her literal job to be educated on it. It was also her job to educate others on the UCMJ, but there she was, completely dumbfounded. The sergeant told me to return to formation. She then screeched in her normal tone, "Does anyone else feel I violated the UCMJ?" Every airman remained silent. She screeched even louder, "I said, does anyone else feel I violated the UCMJ?" In that moment, I was reminded how outnumbered I was. I was up against the mindless machine of the military. I was defending these morons, and here they were, standing there silently with their tails between their legs. At this point, you could throw a hand grenade in the middle of formation, and so long as Corey wasn't in it, I wouldn't feel a thing. Upon Sergeant Cassava demanding an answer once more, our flight screamed in sync, "No, Sergeant!" The only person who didn't belch out a desperate "No, Sergeant" was Corey, who was right next to me in the formation. I think Corey was too scared to say anything at all. Speaking out against higher ranking enlisted members, training instructors at that, was unheard of in the field. Sergeant Cassava didn't really punish me beyond turning my entire flight against me that day. I thought the incident would be left on the training course, but the next day I was proven wrong. Before I could even get into the training building that my class was in, Sergeant Cassava confronted me outside and told me to report to a master sergeant who was waiting for me in the basement of the building. I followed her order and walked downstairs. It wasn't hard to find his office, as most of the floor wasn't well lit, and his room was brightly glowing in the middle of a dark hallway. As I walked in, the master sergeant's secretary greeted me, saying, "Hello! How can I help you?" I told her I was Airman Linfeld, and she pointed me to an already open door with an obviously infuriated master sergeant sitting behind his bright wooden desk just beyond it. The man had dead eyes and was actively staring intensely in my direction. Excuse me. Thinking to myself, well, this should be incredible. I walked towards him. Without hesitation, he lurched up and screamed, "You know nothing about the UCMJ, Airman!" I stopped and stood silently in front of his desk. I asked, "Would you like me to close the door, Master Sergeant?" He immediately screamed back, "No, you!" He was clearly holding back from insulting me. It was like he was angry and terrified at the same time. The master sergeant then pointed out at a massive book on his desk. "This is the UCMJ!" He lifted the book up and shoved it into my chest from across the desk. Now holding the fully open UCMJ in my arms, he commanded me to read the section I called out Sergeant Cassava for violating. I looked for the passage he wanted me to read, but could not find it. The master sergeant furiously grabbed the book out of my hands and awkwardly tried to find the passage himself. Once he located it, he shoved the book back into my chest and pointed at it. I then read the passage aloud to him. As I expected, it stated what I said it did. Why was I even in that office being yelled at? Clearly, Sergeant Cassava was not authorized to use emasculating terms towards other enlisted members. I looked up at the master sergeant without any expression or emotion. The sergeant, still looking furious again, "Keep reading!" I looked down at the UCMJ once more to see what he was talking about. Before I continue, I want to point something out to all of you reading this. The UCMJ quotes, "We were issued," covered only excerpts. They apparently didn't tell the full story. I literally called out Sergeant Cassava because of how the UCMJ excerpts were presented within the training guide they issued us. What the Master Sergeant was referring to was something I had never seen. It was a section that was not included in any document I had yet seen. I continued to read the section I was never issued. The second half of the paragraph specifically stated that emasculating people was unacceptable, unless in a training environment. I don't feel humbled. I didn't feel like I was even wrong. I felt like I was screwed over. I was set up to fail because they issued a document directly to trainees. They could not be treated a certain way. Yet that statement was all for show. We clearly could be treated like we were nothing. It's not that I cared about how badly we were treated. It was that I was specifically told we could not be treated a certain way, only to see a spoiled brat for a sergeant break those alleged rules. This was really about her. This was really about calling her out and shutting her up. I am truly surrounded by morons. Don't tell me the rules. and then yell at me for expecting them to be followed by the people who told me them. Our training guide gave many people who read it the false impression that men are to be treated like men no matter what. I shouldn't be surprised. This wasn't the first injustice I experienced in the military, and it wasn't the last. Great. The master sergeant continued screaming at me after I read that section, but I wasn't paying any attention. I was brewing in the reminder as to why I hate most everyone. I haven't softened up after all. All the hate was coming back. I imagined shoving a chainsaw into the gut of the screaming master sergeant and cutting him down like a tree. The satisfaction it would give me watching him choke on his own blood as he gargled bloody screams at me. This was a con job. They set me up to fail and they knew it. I wanted to see him bleed for his deception. The pathetic part of this entire incident is it doesn't end with Master Sergeant trying to humiliate me in front of his secretary. Hours after I was excused from the Master Sergeant's office, Sergeant Cassava called me in front of the entire flight out in the field and educated everyone on what happens to airmen who try to correct his or her superior enlisted members. What a joke. Them mocking someone for standing up for the UCMJ was specifically mind-numbing due to the fact that the very same people who regularly encouraged us to report corruption with the military were now discouraging us from reporting corruption. It wasn't just an enlisted member wellness issue. It was a PR issue for the entire Air Force. None of this mattered in this fleeting moment to anyone but me, it seemed. These drones posing as human beings could only see 10 feet in front of them. That's how you dive off a cliff, boys and girls. Stay stupid. Sergeant Cassava just had to parade around about her victory over me. A mere infant of the military. This newborn military baby who quoted a section of the UCMJ she didn't even know existed before she was confronted about it. Do punchlines get better than that? She was a walking, talking comedy show. Problem is, you have to have a working brain to understand why she was so tragically hilarious. A male training sergeant called out, "Airman Linfeld, step out of formation and report to the front." I complied. Obviously, in the military, you rarely have a choice when it comes to direct commands. Once I stood in front of my flight as he commanded, the male training sergeant spoke aloud to everyone around. He said, "This is an example of an airman who has failed you all. This is an example of an airman who speaks without knowing the slightest bit about what he's talking about. You bastard. God, I would love to shove my fist down your throat and watch you suffocate like a helpless beached fish in front of your precious puppets." As I stood there being ridiculed in front of my peers, more rules of the military kept bouncing around my mind. Rules specifically frowning on singling enlisted members out or using humiliation tactics. But this time I doubted myself. The rules I read prior were obviously not the full story. I was better off remaining silent and letting them bask in their false victory. Even if I was right and proceeded to call them out on rules they were now breaking, who cared about the truth anymore? These airmen were sick of me. The rest of the day, when we weren't forced into formation, I spent in isolation. This wasn't by order of the sergeants, but by the choice of my peers. I was a cancer to them, and the only one who could even look at me without scorn was Corey. As I sat alone, she looked my way a couple of times. One of the times I looked directly after her, she smiled and waved. That single act of kindness was enough to get me through the rest of the day. Holy fuck. Jesus motherfucker. Did he think that he was going to go into the military, read the rule book, and then manipulate his way through the thing? Well, that was chapter 12 of This Is Why I Hate You. I really hope we get to go back to high school soon because I'm so sick of the military. Like, why are we after this random girl drill sergeant all of a sudden? And why does Greg think that the army isn't going to be like loud and abusive? It's what, I don't know. It's not like it's a mystery what training camp is. Well, that gives me something to look forward to then. Because I'm sick and fucking tired of 4 chapters about the military. Again, I don't know what to say. I think I keep thinking that I'll be able to like notice an underlying something, and I don't think there's any of that coming. I think this might just be the same thing through and through. I don't know what Arthur wants in life because everything sucks. And it doesn't matter if it's something that makes him happy. He'll still hate that. So I don't know what Arthur wants to do. It is an exaggerated diary, but it's weird that the fourth wall gets broken when like Greg starts talking to the reader. You know, like before I continue, I want to point out something to all of you reading this. That's very odd to do like a whole page and a half where you're talking directly to the reader, explaining what your character is saying. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's like everything has to be viewed as so fucking difficult and impossible. Like high school and people there are difficult and impossible. The military is difficult and impossible. Your parents are difficult and impossible, and everyone is out to get you. Except for me, because I'm your friend. Yeah, you gotta explain why he's right. And yeah, this character, you can call him whatever you want, but this character is Greg. Every character is Greg. In just a minute here, I will fire back and we will do chapter 13. This is a bubblegum soda. I don't drink stuff with sugar in it, except when I'm sitting in here. I buy special sodas. That's just all pink sugar. This bubblegum soda that gets caught in your fucking teeth. The Pop Shop. You know it. You know it. There used to be a Pop Shop bottling store, like a small mom and pop shop by my mom and dad's house when I was a kid. And we used to walk up there and get one for like, I don't know what it was, 60 cents or some shit. I do remember about the Pop Shop. And when we went up there, there was a couple of Mormon kids on my block that were, you're always best friends with the kids on your block. And we would go up to the store, and if we went to the Pop Shop, they would have to go to the little gas station around the corner and get something to drink because their parents didn't want them holding glass bottles that were the same shape as beer bottles. So this was not allowed. And I always remember that. They saw like the dad's root beer bottles that are brown and actually look like beer bottles, because dad's root beer looks like a beer bottle. This fucking thing is pink and blue. Thanks to everybody for coming and listening to me read. I'm not as nervous as I was yesterday. I was fucking nervous yesterday. The last time I was that nervous as I was on Friday night or Saturday night was the night I was getting made a Mason. That I can't believe that I was that nervous. It's like when my Mason stuff happened, I was ready like 4 hours before I had to go. And Saturday night, I was just nervous. Well, thank you for. Why would I be nervous? Holy shit. The world is ready to chew you up and spit you out if you say the wrong pronoun. And I try to be as sensitive as possible, but it just takes one wrong sentence for the world to turn on you. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. You do. Well, if I pussied out over the whole thing, I wouldn't be me saying be brave would have absolutely no clout if I just pussed out and did shit and didn't do shit I was afraid of. So practicing what I preach. Jesus fuck. What does it mean to be a Mason? Well, that's a very long story, but a Freemason is the whole word. And one day I will explain that. Chapter 13, Coward's Way Out. Once again, it's been some time since I last updated my journal. I'm stationed in Oklahoma now. Corey was stationed here as well. Initially, she was supposed to go to North Dakota. North Dakota, it's basically a frozen hellhole. Fortunately, she was able to trade her destination with someone who had the same security clearance as her. Just like that, she was bound for the same base. I'm not exactly sure what it is with her and I, but we haven't wound up in a typical guy-girl relationship. You know how people of the opposite gender work, right? First, they get to know a bit about each other. Eventually, or right away, both people wind up single. One thing leads to another, and bam, the girl's pregnant. That's not us, I guess. I literally gratify myself to the thought of her on a regular basis. But that's literally the limitation of our relationship beyond friendship. I would make a movie, but there's just something that screams for me not to. Also, I'm generally terrified of screwing things up between us. A lot of times there's a point when you get to know a girl and you have to decide whether you're going to be friends or date. And I think that ship has not only sailed, but is long forgotten. Now, she and I act like typical guy friends. We hang out in our dorms, play video games, and talk crap about literally everyone else in the entire squadron. Catty bitches. Corey specifically likes to make fun of male airmen. She finds the ones who try to act tough the most pathetic and desperate. She said a lot of them are just little boys trying to fit in big boy pants. Hard to disagree. There are 50-year-old men who act like they're 10. Why not these 18 to 26-year-old airmen? Oklahoma, in general, is a crap-infested brown ghetto of a state. There aren't many trees. I have yet to see a single mountain, and the entire base itself is completely flat. The place is littered with dirt and dead grass. Even our dorms are brown. Talk about eye garbage. Anyway, Corey has been pretty upset with me, regularly volunteering to be deployed overseas to hostile countries. Here's the thing. From what I've seen on TV and heard from sergeants, it's important we volunteer, as the people we're taking on are far worse than us. Based on everything I've heard, the good people in those countries need us to help them. Just reading what I wrote makes me feel like a sucker. But I can only go off the information that's available. The info I has all point to us being the good guys. If I don't help when given the opportunity, what am I? The coward I promised myself I would never be again. No. I hate the idea of refusing to assist people in need. So whenever the opportunity comes up, I'm there. Corey literally ran off crying back in training when the sergeants played a practical joke on us. The training instructors told us we were all getting deployed right away and our destination base plans were canceled. No North Dakota, no Oklahoma, straight to the desert for us. I would have chased after Corey when she ran off, but she went in the girls' restroom. I was also experiencing a problem of my own, specifically a massive sinking feeling in my chest. I wasn't ready to be deployed back then either. I wanted to get settled at my new base first. Fortunately, that was all a sick joke. Enough time has passed. Now I'm ready. So far, I've been through 2 pre-deployment training sessions. I learned how to fire a number of weapons, including the shotgun, machine gun grenade launcher, yes, that exists, and a couple heavy machine guns. They're all pretty terrifying machines. The big problem with me getting deployed is I'm always a backup to go. I'm the guy the Air Force goes to when someone finds out they're pregnant or has another medical condition that prevents them from being deployed. Speaking of which, let's talk about that. Something the military regularly does is incentivize incentive. I know what the fucking word is, I just can't say it. Incentivizes? Incentivizes. Is that a word? Incentivize. It's spelled fucked up. Something the military regularly does is give shit in. Something the military regularly does is make people want to treat their bodies like crap. They do this by refusing to send people who can't meet a certain physical standard. The process is actually entirely reasonable, considering a medically messed up person puts everyone else in jeopardy out in the field. But the abuse of the system is constant. It's always the social rejects that take advantage of these generous precautions. You may think I'm an outcast at my new base, but in reality, I'm generally accepted. No one but Corey came with me from my last flight, and since then I haven't really upset anyone. As for these physical rejects, they always have problems making friends wherever they go and are regularly awkward. Like something's wrong with their brains. For instance, one sergeant seems to be blatantly getting fatter, so she can't pass her physical training test. She hasn't been sent anywhere since she got to the base years ago, and now very likely can now not get deployed either. Or so that's what she told me when we were posted together. Then there's this other sergeant who has sleep apnea. Coincidentally, every person I've seen with sleep apnea also has horrible dieting habits. I wish these people would put down the donuts, cut their cake out of their daily consumption, and serve their goddamn country so people who actually have honor wouldn't have to catch bullets in place of them. What irony, right? If they did that, it would make them brave, wouldn't it? This is why cowards live and courageous people die. In the military, if you get pregnant, they say you not only lose your ability to be deployed, but can also elect to separate from the military entirely. We all know the military isn't something you can just quit on a whim. You sign a contract when you join that you're legally bound to. What this means is there are likely thousands of babies out there who literally exists because mommy simply got tired of serving her country. Oh, you piece of shit. Kids are not tools you use to get out of your obligations. Sadly, this is a side effect of giving good people reasonable options. Screwed up people take advantage of those options and abuse them. Regardless, after multiple attempts failed to get deployed to a hostile country, I finally volunteered to get deployed to South Korea. It's technically considered a deployment, as North and South Korea are still officially at war. The two countries constantly look like they're at peace, considering there hasn't been a truly hostile act between them for quite a few years, but they say everyone has their fingers on the trigger. It's just a matter of time. I don't buy it. I think they'll never go to actual war ever again. If it really is safe, I'm hoping Corey volunteers as well. She is basically the only person I want to be around. Ever. That was chapter 14. of This Is Why I Hate You. I don't know what this book is about. What is this book about? Like, it doesn't, if it's supposed to be a diary, at the beginning of every chapter, the first line is, "It's been months since I wrote anything in my diary." Like, I got the sniffles. We all know Greg's a dirty bitch. We all know that. I saw something on Twitter earlier. It was a cartoon. I think, I'm not sure who posted it. It was one of Greg's, weird sex cartoons where he's ridiculous, but he has himself bent over in this cartoon. What is he writing another book? This shouldn't be as much fun as it is. Well, there's not too much to talk about. There's not too much to discuss because we're just in the military and we're complaining about how the military works, all the while not explaining anything about the military, just giving us a list from your perspective on why the military is a failure. Ugh. Just give me 1 second, then we will continue. And the two girls that helped me out I don't think I would be able to do this without them. Even since the very beginning, first video I ever made, without those two girls' help, I wouldn't be able to do this. I'm not sure what they use on their names on here, but you guys will see them. They're the two secretaries. It looks like business is about to pick up a little bit. Chapter 14. The Wrong Move. So you know what I said earlier regarding something about Corey being different? As if there was an internal voice screaming for me to not make a move on her? Well, I was right. The other night, I was sitting in my pajamas on my bed. I was in my dorm room waiting for Corey to get back. She was a little late, as the airman, who was supposed to take her post, failed to show up. As I waited for her alone in my room, I felt I wasn't exactly prepared for what was about to happen. I told Corey earlier I had some crazy news to give her. How was she going to take it? Would we realize the end was near and finally confess our feelings? Did she even feel what I felt? Finally, she showed up looking happy to see me. Corey said, "Hey, I'm missed you today. Thought about you a lot on post." I smiled and said, "I missed you too, Corey." She gave me a big smile, and I continued. "So, the news that I had," she replied in a tired but interested tone. "Yeah, you can tell me about it." I confessed. "I'm going to South Korea." Complete silence invaded the room. Corey clearly didn't like what she just heard. Regardless of her natural disappointment, she didn't want to discourage me. She replied, "Oh, I guess that's better than the desert then?" I tried to stay positive. I knew she volunteered shortly after I convinced her, so there was a chance we could go together. I said, "Well, you volunteered for South Korea too, remember? They might send you a short while after me." Suddenly it became obvious she was struggling to make it appear like she was okay. Her efforts gave out, and her lips sank into a frown. Corey put her hands on her face and began to cry. I quickly moved towards her and hugged her. She leaned into my hug and began to soak my pajama top with her tears. Was this about me? I asked, "What's going on, Corey?" As the tears continued to fall, she said, "I'm getting deployed already. They can't send me to Korea. I'm slotted to go somewhere else." Sadness overtook me. This was a guarantee that we wouldn't be seeing each other for some time. On top of that, bad news. She was going to an actual war zone, whereas my deployment was to a place that had no significant conflicts since before I was born. My deployment was ideal. I was going from a flat and dirty nothing state to a scenery and nature-rich, exotic nation. Now trying to wipe the tears away from her face, she rose up and said, "It's okay, Arthur. I joined the military voluntarily. I should have expected this." I replied, "Yeah, but we didn't expect each other, Corey." She let out a painful laugh and said, "That's true. You suck." I smiled and softly laughed. A good portion of the night, Corey and I sat on my tiny bed watching movies. At some point, I felt it was reasonable to put my arm around her. She seemed to react like she was happy I did. This made me pretty happy, so I looked at her with a warm smile. Whatever we were watching, I don't even remember. I had been fantasizing about being with Corey since I met her, and the realization I was going to lose her soon made me desperate to make a move. Without much hesitation, with my arm still around her, I said, "Corey?" She looked at me with a look of nervous concern on her face. I just hoped her facial expression meant she was scared about our friendship changing. I was going to go for it. I leaned in to kiss her, but before I could make contact with her, she said under her breath, "Stop." We were so close. I could feel her breath softly impact my lips. The warm, sweet-smelling air released just beyond her lips almost soothed the heartache I felt. No, I was heartbroken. I felt like I was being ripped apart inside from just that one word. Instead of pulling back, I quickly diverted my lips towards her ear and whispered, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Immediately, Corey began bursting out laughing. "You are such a freaking idiot!" She screamed with a grin on her face as she rose to her knees while moving to the base of my bed. I smiled, looking across the bed at her, and replied, "Hey, I'm just watching a movie here." She laughed when she heard me struggle to maintain my dignity and screamed back, "Oh, bull crap, you idiot!" and continued to laugh. My face was blushing, but I tried to hide it. Corey saw the look of embarrassment on my face and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Let's finish off the movie and you can sleep off your urges, okay?" I mumbled under my breath, "I don't have any urges, and you're a crazy person saying crazy things." Again, she busted out laughing and calling me an idiot, but for some reason moved back to sit next to me. Still giggling, she said, "Put your arm back around me, you idiot." I smiled embarrassingly, sighed, and put my arm around her again. As Corey looked at me, her eyes appeared as if they were seeing fireworks go off for the first time. They were full of life and accompanied by a cheesy grin on her face. As she stared at me with that silly look, she said, "I love you, you idiot." It was the first time she said she loved me. Unfortunately, this new confession was accompanied by her calling me an idiot. That fact isn't important. I love her too, so I said it back. Just like Corey said, we finished the movie, and shortly after she went back to her room. Despite her positive spin on what happened, I still took the rejection to heart. I basically cried myself to sleep, which is something I don't ever remember doing over a girl. At least she loves me. That was chapter 14 of This Is Why I Hate You. And something spectacular has happened. We have a character that showed actual growth and maturity. Corey actually realizes the situation she's in, that they're going to be deployed at different spots, and it's long distance. It's not going to work. They're both young. So she decides to not take that step. Ring the fucking gong, book over. But maybe I don't know where this book goes. Excuse me 1 second. I hope everybody enjoyed that chapter. I think it got a little out of hand there for a minute, but I tried to reel it back in. Yeah. Oh, and there's Tay, who is one of the 2 secretaries, and she has helped so much, like a million years across the world. And I'll text her shit like, "Hey, want to be the moderator on some shit I don't know how to work?" And she'll help. And I'll have to do something super nice for her one day. I'm glad that you liked the rendition of it. Um, but yeah, that hopefully we're gonna get out of the military here one of these days. That was a weird chapter. The other thing I wanted to talk about, just briefly, was mystery boxes. I like mystery boxes, and I like mystery, and I like surprises, and I like silly shit. That's what I like. So what I decided, when it comes to all this YouTube stuff, it's very complicated. For some reason, like 60% of my doctor business videos are demonetized by YouTube. But then like the other, let's say, well, I guess the other, not even 40%, 20% of the videos will then be able to be monetized, but they're the exact same video. It's just me reading a fucking book. Why is one different from another? I don't know. But instead of fucking with all that, I just thought, you know what? How about all of us get together? And I also didn't know how, out of like 5,000 subscribers, how I was supposed to pick a name out of there. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe everybody can just buy a ticket. And then once a month, I will send somebody a mystery box, because through Patreon, no one has to give out any personal information either. So that works as well. So mystery boxes are a cool idea. And we started talking about that, I think, back in like December. We just didn't know how to execute it. But now we do. So let's see how the mystery box thing goes, and let's see if it's any fun. There's only one tier on there, $3. They wouldn't let me do $1. $3 is the least I could do. But let's have some fun with the thing and see what happens. I want to thank everybody for coming by and watching. And in the next day, we will get back into it. And we will talk about it more. But this has been Doctorpiece Theater. And my name is Dr. Dennis Business. And as always, my live new friends.